incomprehensible, impalpable, not lessened, most rich in all dispensations of itself. Fire, as saith Pliny, is the boundless and mischievous part of the nature of things, it being a question whether it destroys or produceth most things. Fire itself is one, and penetrates through all things, as say the Pythagoreans, also spread abroad in the heavens and shining, but in the infernal place straitened, dark, and tormenting. In the midway it partakes of both. Fire therefore in itself is one, but in that which receives it, manifold, and in differing subjects it is distributed in a different manner, as Cleanthes witnesseth in Cicero. That fire then which we use is fetched out of other things. It is in stones, and is fetched out by the stroke of the steel. It is in earth, and makes that, after digging up, to smoke. It is in water, and heats springs and wells. It is in the depth of the sea, and makes that, being tossed with winds, warm. It is in the air, and makes it, as we oftentimes see, to burn. And all animals and living things whatsoever, as also all vegetables, are preserved by heat, and everything that lives by reason of the enclosed heat. The properties of the fire that is above are heat, making all things fruitful and light, giving life to all things. The properties of the infernal fire are a parching heat, consuming all things, and darkness, making all things barren. The celestial and bright fire drives away spirits of darkness. Also this, our fire made with wood, drives away the same inasmuch as it hath an analogy with, and is the vehiculum of that superior light, as also of him who saith, I am the light of the world, which is true fire, the father of lights, from whom every good thing that is given comes, sending forth the light of his fire, and communicating it first to the sun and the rest of the celestial bodies, and by these, as by mediating instruments, conveying that light into our fire. As therefore the spirits of darkness are stronger in the dark, so good spirits, which are angels of light, are augmented, not only by that light which is divine of the sun and celestial, but also by the light of our common fire. Hence it was that the first and most wise institutors of religions and ceremonies ordained that prayers, singings, and all manner of divine worships whatsoever should not be performed without lighted candles or torches. Hence, also, was that significant saying of Pythagoras, Do not speak of God without a light. And they commanded that for the driving away of wicked spirits, lights and fires should be kindled by the corpses of the dead, and that they should not be removed until the expiations were after a holy manner performed, and they buried. And the great Jehovah himself in the old law commanded that all his sacrifices should be offered with fire, and that fire should always be burning upon the altar, which custom the priests of the altar did always observe and keep amongst the Romans. Now the basis and foundation of all the elements is the earth, for that is the object, subject, and receptacle of all celestial rays and influences. In it are contained the seeds and seminal virtues of all things, and therefore it is said to be animal, vegetable, and mineral. It being made fruitful by the other elements and the heavens, it brings forth all things of itself. It receives the abundance of all things, and is, as it were, the first fountain from whence all things spring. It is the center, foundation, and mother of all things. Take as much of it as you please, separated, washed, depurated, subtilized. If you let it lie in the open air a little while, it will, being full and abounding with heavenly virtues, of itself bring forth plants, worms, and other living things, also stones, and bright sparks of metals. In it are great secrets, if at any time it shall be purified by the help of fire, and reduced unto its simplicity by a convenient washing. It is the first matter of our creation, and the truest medicine that can restore and preserve us. Chapter VI, of the wonderful natures of water, air, and winds. The other two elements, viz., water and air, are not less efficacious than the former, neither is nature wanting to work wonderful things in them. There is so great a necessity of water, that without it no living thing can live. No herb nor plant whatsoever, without the moistening of water, can branch forth. In it is the seminary virtue of all things, especially of animals. The seeds also of trees and plants, although they are earthy, must notwithstanding of necessity be rotted and watered before they can be fruitful, whether they be imbibed with the moisture of the earth, or with dew, or rain, or any other water that is on purpose put to them. For Moses writes that only earth and water bring forth a living soul. But he ascribes a twofold production of things to water, viz., of things swimming in the waters, and of things flying in the air above the earth, and that those productions that are made in and upon the earth are partly attributes to the very water. The same Scripture testifies, where it saith that the plants and the herbs did not grow, because God had not caused it to rain upon the earth. Such is the efficacy of this element of water, that spiritual regeneration cannot be done without it, as Christ himself testified to Nicodemus. Very great, also, is the virtue of it in the religious worship of God, in expiations and purifications, yea, the necessity of it is no less than that of fire. Infinite are the benefits, and divers are the uses thereof, as being that by virtue of which all things subsist, are generated, nourished, and increased. Thence it was that Thales of Miletus and Hesiod concluded that water was the beginning of all things, and said it was the first of all the elements, and the most potent, and that because it hath the mastery over all the rest. For, as Pliny saith, waters swallow up the earth, extinguish flames, ascend on high, and by the stretching forth of the clouds, challenge the heaven for their own. The same falling become the cause of all things that grow in the earth. Very many are the wonders that are done by waters, according to the writings of Pliny, Solinus, and many other historians of the wonderful virtue whereof. Ovid also makes mention in these verses. Ornhamon's waters at high noon are cold, hot at sunrise and setting sun. Wood, put in bubbling Athamas is feared, the moon then farthest from the sun reddered. Saconian streams congeal his guts to stone that thereof drinks, and what therein is thrown Crathis and Sybaris, from the mountains rolled. Color the hair like amber or pure gold. Some fountains of a more prodigious kind not only change the body but the mind. Who have not heard or have seen Salmacis, of the Ethiopian lake? For who of this but only taste, their wits no longer keep, or forthwith fall into a deadly sleep. Who at clitorious fountain thirst remove loath wine, and abstinent mere water love. With streams opposed to these Lyncestus flows. They reel as drunk, who drink too much of those. A lake in fair Arcadia stands, of old called Phineus, suspected as twofold. Fear and forbear to drink thereof by night unwholesome, wholesome by daylight. Josephus also makes relation of the wonderful nature of a certain river betwixt Arcia and Raphania, cities of Syria, which runs with a full channel all the Sabbath day, and then on a sudden ceaseth, as if the springs were stopped, and all the 6 days you may pass over it dry shod. But again, on the 7th day, no man knowing the reason of it, the waters return again in abundance as before. Wherefore the inhabitants thereabout called it the Sabbath day river, because of the 7th day, which was holy to the Jews. The gospel also testifies to a sheep pool, into which whosoever stepped first, after the water was troubled by the angel, was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. The same virtue and efficacy we read was in a spring of the Jonian nymphs, which was in the territories belonging to the town of Elis, at a village called Heraclea, near the river Cithron, which whosoever stepped into, being diseased, came forth whole and cured of all his diseases. Pausanias also reports that in Lysus, a mountain of Arcadia, there was a spring called Agria, to which as often as the dryness of the region threatened the destruction of fruits, Jupiter's priests of Lysus went, and after the offering of sacrifices, devoutly praying to the waters of the spring, holding a bough of an oak in his hand, put it down to the bottom of the hallowed spring. Then the waters, being troubled, vapor ascending from thence into the air was blown into clouds, with which, being joined together, the whole heaven was overspread, which being a little after dissolved into rain, watered all the country most wholesomely. Moreover, Rufus, a physician of Ephesus, besides many other authors, wrote strange things concerning the wonders of waters, which for aught I know are found in no other author. It remains that I speak of the air. This is a vital spirit, passing through all beings, giving life and subsistence to all things, binding, moving, and filling all things. Hence it is that the Hebrew doctors reckon it not amongst the elements, but count it as a medium or glue, joining things together, and as the resounding spirit of the world's instrument. It immediately receives into itself the influences of all celestial bodies, and then communicates them to the other elements, as also to all mixed bodies. Also it receives into itself, as it were a divine looking-glass, the species of all things, as well natural as artificial, as also of all manner of speeches, and retains them, and carrying them with it, and entering into the bodies of men and other animals through their pores, makes an impression upon them, as well when they sleep as when they be awake, and affords matter for divers strange dreams and divinations. Hence they say it is, that a man passing by a place where a man was slain, or the carcass newly hid, is moved with fear and dread, because the air in that place, being full of the dreadful species of manslaughter, doth being breathed in, move and trouble the spirit of the man with the like species, whence it is that he comes to be afraid. For everything that makes a sudden impression astonisheth nature. Whence it is that many philosophers were of opinion that air is the cause of dreams, and of many other impressions of the mind, through the prolonging of images, or similitudes, or species, which are fallen from things and speeches, multiplied in the very air, until they come to the senses, and then to the fantasy and soul of him that receives them, which being freed from cares and no way hindered, expecting to meet such kind of species, is informed by them. For the species of things, although of their own proper nature they are carried to the senses of men, and other animals in general, may notwithstanding get some impression from the heaven whilst they be in the air, by reason of which, together with the aptness and disposition of him that receives them, they may be carried to the sense of one rather than of another. And hence it is possible naturally, and far from all manner of superstition, no other spirit coming between, that a man should be able in a very little time to signify his mind unto another man abiding at a very long and unknown distance from him, although he cannot precisely give an estimate of the time when it is, yet of necessity it must be within 24 hours, and I myself know how to do it, and have often done it. The same also in time past did the abbot Trithenius both know and do. Also, when certain appearances, not only spiritual but also natural, do flow forth from things, that is to say, by a certain kind of flowing forth of bodies from bodies plus, and do gather strength in the air, they offer and show themselves to us as well through light as motion, as well to the sight as to other senses, and sometimes work wonderful things upon us, as Plotinus proves and teacheth. And we see how by the south wind the air is condensed into thin clouds, in which, as in a looking-glass, are reflected representations at a great distance of castles, mountains, horses, and men, and other things which, when the clouds are gone, presently vanish. And Aristotle, in his Meteors, shows that a rainbow is conceived in a cloud of the air, as in a looking-glass. And Albertus saith that the effigies of bodies may, by the strength of nature, in a moist air be easily represented, in the same manner as the representations of things are in things. And Aristotle tells of a man to whom it happened, by reason of the weakness of his sight, that the air that was near to him became, as it were, a looking-glass to him, and the optic beam did reflect back upon himself, and could not penetrate the air, so that whithersoever he went he thought he saw his own image, with his face towards him, go before him. In like manner, by the artificialness of some certain looking-glasses may be produced at a distance in the air, beside the looking-glasses, what images we please, which when ignorant men see, they think they see the appearances of spirits or souls, when indeed they are nothing else but semblances kin to themselves, and without life. And it is well known, if in a dark place where there is no light but by the coming in of a beam of the sun somewhere through a little hole, a white paper or plain looking-glass be set up against that light, that there may be seen upon them whatsoever things are done without, being shined upon by the sun. And there is another sleight or trick yet more wonderful. If any one shall take images artificially painted, or written letters, and in a clear night set them against the beams of the full moon, whose resemblances, being multiplied in the air, and caught upward and reflected back together with the beams of the moon, any other man that is privy to the thing, at a long distance sees, reads, and knows them in the very compass and circle of the moon, which art of declaring secrets is indeed very profitable for towns and cities that are besieged, being a thing which Pythagoras long since did often do, and which is not unknown to some in these days. I will not except myself, and all these and many more, and greater than these, are grounded in the very nature of the air, and have their reasons and causes declared in mathematics and optics. And as these resemblances are reflected back to the sight, so also sometimes to the hearing, as is manifest in the echo. But there are more secret arts than these, and such whereby any one may at a very remote distance hear and understand what another speaks or whispers softly. There are also, from the airy element, winds, for they are nothing else but air moved and stirred up.